Well, howdy doody, and welcome back to my venture across the United States where I visit each state and cover some of the urban legends and local mythology present in the area. We're passing through the United States in alphabetical order as we go along this journey, and before we start, I just want to let you know I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a bunch and it won't cost you a dime, ever. Today we're visiting Missouri, the Show Me State. Now, I practically grew up in Missouri, and therefore I know the secret, that the state's nickname is actually halfway to being an insult. Despite this, it appears there's a lot I didn't know though, as, in Missouri, it appears there's a few creepy, crawly creatures dwelling within it. So come with me today through the streets of St. Louis, the trees of Mark Twain National Forest, and more. But stay close, it's dangerous out here. Number 1 is the Devil's Chair in Kirksville. No matter how bad your back is hurting while you visit Kirksville, Missouri, don't you dare sit down in this chair. See, back in the day, folks would carve out chairs and stick them in graveyards so that people could have a nice seat as they sat down and mourned the passing of their family and friends, but this chair in particular bears a less wholesome and far more sinister reputation, and that reputation might just take you 6 feet under if you're not careful. Now, at most hours of the day, this chair is perfectly mundane. You can sit in it all you like, and you won't have any trouble, perhaps except for some water getting on your butt, as from the photos I've seen, the design of this chair lends itself to capturing a bit of water. This chair doesn't necessarily have any creepy roots either, as it was commissioned by a local banker, William Baird, and built in 1890 as a memorial to his brother and sister. That's all there is to it, nothing scary really, that is, until you hear the legend associated with it. Legend has it that if you're sitting in this chair and the clock strikes midnight, you're in danger. A hand will come out of one of the nearby graves and will grab you, and it'll drag you straight back down into the ground with it. Most stories say this just happens at midnight on any old night, but some say this is more likely to happen on Halloween. Now, most folks pass this whole legend off as a wives' tale, but personally, legend or not, you won't catch me sitting in that chair at midnight. So what do you think? Have you sat down in the chair at midnight? What happened to you? Let me know in the comments. Number 2 is Zombie Road. Outside of St. Louis in the suburb of Wildwood, on what was originally a road named Lawler Ford Road that was built in the 1860s, is a storied stretch of trail with a reputation as one of the most haunted places in the Midwest and maybe in the United States. Back when this trail was a road, it was narrow and twisty, running through the woods at sharp angles that made it treacherous to drive along and dangerous, and because of this, it eventually stopped being used and fell into disrepair, eventually becoming abandoned. To add to this creepiness, not only is the road abandoned, but it's also lined by some homes that were once part of a resort community until the 1940s. These factors helped Zombie Road earn its namesake as Zombie Road from the apparent hauntings that take place here that some attribute to the old residents of the resort community that is now abandoned. Now, the list of hauntings on this road isn't short by any measure. There's plenty of scares here. To start, there's the less ghostly and more alive Zombie Road, a guy that lives in the woods and would wait for young lovers to come to this creepy lover's lane before attacking them. There's also an abandoned train track that runs through the woods that was ditched because of the sharp turns it took that made trains prone to derailment, and supposedly there's a ghost that frequents these tracks. This individual can be seen haunting the railroad tracks that run through these woods, and some even say she hums to herself as she paces along. This story in particular becomes even creepier when you realize that there's some credence to it. Back in 1876, a local woman named Della McCullough was hit by a train along this stretch of road and passed away. Because of this, folks that see this ghost claim that it's Della just doing her rounds in the area. There's also sightings of an old woman in one of the abandoned houses. Some just see her pacing around inside of the house, but others say that she's yelled to or perhaps at visitors to the road. When they go in the house to see who's inside, without fail they're met with silence and an empty home. There's also some bluffs that run along the trail, and supposedly there's a young boy that you can see overlooking them sometimes in the dead of night from a distance. They say this is the ghost of a young boy that, while overlooking the cliffs, slipped and fell into the river below, passing in the process. Now these days, despite the trail being a road in disrepair, it certainly does not dissuade visitors. Rather, in modern day, it's become a spot where local teens will escape to, avoid the prying eyes of adults to drink, hang out, and make out. Because of this, and because of the general allure of such a spooky place, this haunted road actually bears some eyewitness testimony that might make you rethink whether this is all a bunch of hocus pocus. For instance, a local news station in the St. Louis area had an individual report to them that while on a walk in these woods, she heard screeching and felt pain, only to check her leg where she felt pain after running back to her car and finding that she'd been scratched. What makes this account scarier is that the individual reports that this scratch occurred underneath leather horse riding chaps that she'd been wearing, and the chaps themselves were undamaged. There was also a documentary named Children of the Grave put out that visited this trail, and they claim to have caught footage of something they refer to as a shadow nest of children, which, to be honest, I don't have a clue what that means, and neither does the news station that reported this. However, the folks that made this documentary apparently claim to have found something. Now, regarding visiting this road yourself, I don't necessarily support the idea, at least not at night. As at night, if you hike there, it's considered trespassing, and apparently, cops have actually given out tickets to people caught trespassing there in the evening. Despite this, as you can tell from the personal accounts, this apparently doesn't stop everyone. So with all of this in mind, and with the local government clearly trying to keep people off of the road at night, what do you think? Do you think this road is haunted, or is it just a bunch of malarkey? Number 3 is the Ghosts of the Elms Hotel. In Excelsior Springs, Missouri, near Kansas City, there's an opulent hotel, actually owned by Hyatt, that has a haunting history dating back to the 1880s. Regarding its past, the site of Excelsior Springs became notable in the 1800s when men far and wide traveled to the area to drink and bathe in the natural spring. There are countless tales of people that are sick making the pilgrimage to the area, drinking the water, and suddenly becoming cured of their ailment. News spread, and soon the town of Excelsior Springs was born, with insurance even covering the treatment. Elms Hotel didn't take long to pop up either, and was first built in 1888 to house people visiting the healing springs. And keep in mind, I said it was first built because it was rebuilt a couple more times. First, the hotel burnt down in 1898, just 10 years later after its building, and then it was rebuilt by 1909, and despite the hiatus, the hotel remained popular. Just nearly 2 years later, though, in 1910, the hotel burnt down again in a fire that was started during a party in the Grand Ballroom. Despite this, once again, the hotel was rebuilt and opened in 1912 once again. Somehow, in both of these fires, nobody was hurt. The hotel survived into Prohibition, where folks say it was a renowned speakeasy, even attracting Al Capone himself. Even other famous individuals like President Harry Truman and many famous actors in their time paid the site a visit. Apparently, some folks liked the hotel so much too that they never left. It's said that there's quite a few ghosts in the Elm Hotel today. In the basement of the hotel, there's a lap pool for swimming, and there's a man that's said to linger, sometimes even creepily watching you while you go for your daily swim. They say that this might be the ghost of a mob man from Prohibition that passed away in the hotel, perhaps not even as an accident, as the mob used to store liquor in the basement where the pool is. There's also reports of a ghostly maid wearing the classic maid attire that dwells on the 3rd floor. She's apparently nothing but sweet and is sort of shy, and is most often reported by housekeeping staff who say they see a curious onlooker occasionally at the entrance to rooms or at the ends of halls, watching them, seeing if they're doing their work right. Regardless of her kind behavior, I personally have no interest in seeing her in my room, though. Finally, there's a less benevolent spirit, in that of a young woman who walks the hallways. Some even say she's looking for a child. Regardless, she seems extremely stressed and perhaps even angry, as it's said that she pulls hair and throws things across the room when you see her. Number 4 is the Ozark Howler. This is America, and everybody's got their own Bigfoot. The Ozark Howler is Missouri's variation, but admittedly, it's also sort of its own thing. They say this creature is more cat or sometimes bear than it is ape, and that it's got dark and matted coats of hair, and that while you're probably most likely to see him in the Ozarks of Missouri, you might also run into him in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas. The creature is roughly bear-sized, which is to say about 400 to 600 pounds, which is notably smaller than most Bigfoot reports you hear, and supposedly it has a unique, eerie, loud cry that's said to be a combination of a wolf and an elk. It's also said to have horns and red eyes. And scariest of all, the Ozark Howler isn't shy like its big bro Bigfoot. No, rather it's said to actually attack folks that get too close to it, and hunts livestock in the area. Word-of-mouth stories about the Howler date as far back as the original settlers, with hunters and trappers in the region reporting unidentifiable howls that would echo across the landscape. It's even said that Daniel Boone himself, the legendary volunteer, took down one of these creatures on a visit to Missouri in 1816. The first official recording of the Howler's presence was in 1946, when multiple sightings of the creature were actually reported in the Arkansas Ozarks. There were more reports of howlers in the area in 1977 and 2011, and between 2005 and 2010, a family in the Boston Mountains of Arkansas also claimed to see the creature in the area, supposedly actually capturing an image of it on their wildlife camera. Although authorities that viewed this image thought it might more likely be a mountain lion, they also admitted that, to their knowledge, there was no mountain lion population in this region or in Missouri. Regarding where the Howler is these days, as recently as 2014 and 2015, media stations have received supposed photos of the creature in the mail, and there have even been wildlife officers dispatched to investigate claims of a bear-like animal in the Ozarks. So it's at least safe to say that local authorities take the creature's possibility seriously. Deniers say that it's perhaps just a bear, or maybe a wolf, or perhaps a cougar, or even perhaps a large domesticated cat that escaped. But up to this point, there's no definitive proof of whether or not the Howler is in fact real. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, especially if you've seen it. At number 5, we have the Joplin Spooklights. Picture yourself driving down the road at night when suddenly you observe an orange ball of light traveling from east to west down the road as well. First it comes towards you, then it's right in front of you, and you can almost even swear you saw it pass straight through your car. You notice it's about the size of a basketball, and eventually it rises above the trees lining the road and it disappears into the night. Was it a lantern? Or perhaps a meteor? All you know is that you just saw something that you can't explain. If you do experience this, you just observed the Joplin Spooklights. Known and reported in the area of Joplin, Missouri, right across the border from Oklahoma, where it is also often reported, this phenomenon has been said to occur for over 100 years at this point. The first mention of the spooklight in print was by a man named A.B. McDonald in January of 1936, and other folks claim that their great relatives that lived in the area before cars even existed also witnessed the phenomenon. The legend of the spooklight is also perpetuated by businesses in the area and the city of Joplin itself, which embraces the strange phenomenon on behalf of the tourism that it generates. Regarding the light, there's plenty of stories about what it might be. There's a legend that the light are the ghosts of 2 deceased young Native American lovers looking for one another, or that it's the ghost of various other Native Americans who died in tragic fashion, like by the hands of another tribe member or by drowning after their lover passed. Others say that it's the ghost of a deceased miner wandering the area. Regardless of what you believe, this light has taken on a bit of a lore like Will-o'-the-Wisp or even the Pukwudgie of New England. It's basically a light in the woods that you shouldn't follow unless you're feeling daring. After all, they do say that this light is best observed when you're alone, so adds to the creep factor. Now don't get too scared of ghosts though. Where there is mythology, folks usually have an explanation handy. In short, this explanation for the spooklight is sort of handled with an Occam's razor. First, there are no print records of this ghost light prior to the designation of Route 66, the nearby road where the light is seen, and second, folks have been able to recreate the spooklight in experiments. Folks have used flashing car headlights, spotlights, and fireworks to create their own ghost light on Spooklight Road, and you can even look up a couple of them done by individuals Thomas Sheard, Robert Gannon, and Alan Rice as far back as 1946 and as recently as 2015. So what do you think? Could these spooklights still be real, even if humans are able to create their own? Thank you all for joining me today on this journey through the Ozarks, backroads, and chairs of Missouri, where the tales are tall as the St. Louis Arch. From balls of light to kitty cat Bigfoot creatures, this was not what I expected, and I thought I knew Missouri pretty darn well. Regardless, if you like this video, just a reminder, I'm making these videos for free, but if you want to change that at no cost to you, you can help by liking, subscribing, and turning on your alerts. And finally, most importantly, remember, whether you were going for a swim and saw some old gangster watching you from the side, or if you just sat down in a chair in a graveyard and felt a tug on your leg, don't you ever forget, it's always story time.